Hi everyone, this is Amy from the Helms Academy, and today we're talking about our Reading and Writing Club recap from September 22nd, 2020, when we talked about commas, semicolons, and colons. So we're going to get right started today with commas. So a comma, you'll notice, is the little mark that goes similar to where a period would go, and it's there to separate ideas. So think about, where is there a natural pause in the things that you're saying to separate those ideas out? And we want to put a comma in those spaces. Now, this is a very simplified version of the rules about commas. There are a lot of rules about where commas can go and where they should not go. But if you know the general idea and the general rules, it's really going to help you make sense of all the smaller and more detailed rules that you should know. So let's look at some practice today. This practice comes from lynchburg.edu and their online writing center. So our first sentence, we're going to see where the commas go. It says, after seminar is over, Ellen goes to the cafeteria to eat dinner with her friends. Now we want to think about where there's a natural break in this. So if we look here, if we say that beginning phrase, after seminar is over, Ellen goes to the cafeteria to eat dinner with her friends. You see a natural pause there, and we want to separate that introductory phrase, like after seminar is over, which tells us about when this is happening, from the rest of the sentence, which is complete. Our second one says, this tutorial, which has wonderful practice exercises, will help me to understand comma usage. So for this one, I'm seeing some extra information that's been inserted in the middle of the sentence. So I want to make sure that information is set aside with commas, and we're going to need more than just one to do that. So if we take a look, we can separate out that middle section. We could say, this tutorial, which has wonderful practice exercises, will help me to understand comma usage. Now, if you are putting two commas like this to separate out a middle part of a sentence, I encourage you to double check your work by reading the part that's outside of the commas. So if I just said, this tutorial will help me to understand comma usage, that is a complete sentence and it makes sense all on its own, which means that what I put in the commas inside of that space, that is extra information that certainly helps us to understand what's going on, but is unnecessary to the structure of the sentence. So we're going to put it in the commas to show that it's something additional. So the third sentence says, Randy asked, can I do the tutorial with you? Now, anytime we see those quotation marks and some kind of introductory phrase like a person asked or said or inquired, we want to make sure that there's a comma that comes after that little introductory phrase and before our quotation marks. The last one says, yes, the tutors are extremely helpful. So I want you to think of things like yes and no. Those are interjections. You can also think about things like wow, and even greetings like hello and good morning. You should follow them with a comma. Our next punctuation is called the semicolon, and the semicolon looks like a combination between a colon and a comma, or a period and a comma, and I like to think about it as that period comma combination, because what it does is it separates two related complete sentences. So what's on one side of the semicolon should be a complete sentence, and what's on the other side should be a complete sentence. Now that's the main use for the semicolon, but we may also see it used in one other circumstance, which is where you separate complex ideas in a list. And we're going to see an example of what that means in just a moment. So here we have a semicolon practice. Where are we going to put the semicolons that make sense? Here, the first one says, the novel is based on Buddha's life. Moreover, it informs the reader about the culture of his time. Now, that's a lot of information to be just one sentence. So we need to break that up. Where are the two separate sentences? Well, here they are, right after life and before moreover. So moreover is a transition word that helps us move into the next thought. And seeing those words like moreover or however or therefore or nevertheless, those types of words will give us a clue that we're starting a new thought. So again, these two sentences have to do with similar things. We're talking about this novel, we're talking about Buddha's life, and both sentences are related. But because they're complete thoughts, we can keep them separated with the semicolon to show that they're complete thoughts. But the semicolon also gives us a clue that these sentences really are closely related. The second one says, Stephen King is known for writing horror books, stories, and films. However, he has also written an engaging instructor's guide to writing. So again, we're looking for that break. Where do this incredibly long sentence, where does it break up into two sentences? And we have a big clue here with the word however. Right? However, just like moreover, is one of those words that shows us a transition. So we can have our first part of our sentence, which is a complete thought, and our second part, which is a complete thought. And we use that semicolon in the middle to separate them, but still show that they're closely related. Now, the semicolon, I also want to point out, does not require you to put a capital letter after it. So when you use a semicolon, you can keep that lowercase m in moreover and that lowercase h in however. Now, our last one is the special example here. It's a little different. So this one says, our family lived in Columbus, Ohio, Richmond, Virginia, San Diego, California, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So when we look at that list of places, your brain is probably already telling you, okay, Columbus, Ohio go together, Richmond, Virginia, those two go together, San Diego, California, those two go together. But when you read this, do you see how Ohio and Richmond are not separated and how Virginia and San Diego are not separated? We know when there's a city-state combination that we have to use a comma in between the city and the state. But if you have a list of cities and states like this, to separate each combination city-state, we're going to use these semicolons. So again, when you have a complex list, something that either has really long items on a list, or something that has a comma, like a city-state combination, then you'll want to use these semicolons to separate the items on the list. Our last punctuation for today is the colon, and a colon begins a list or presents an example. And let's look at some clues into how we can identify the need for a colon. So here are our three sentences. The first one says, I need to pass the following classes to become a registered nurse: pathophysiology, critical care, and pharmacology. So here we're thinking about, okay, we know that this either presents an example or a list. So I see a list already, these three classes, right? So I want to make sure that I set that list off with a colon. Now, a good test of this is if you see that word following, I need to pass the following classes, you can almost guarantee you're going to use a colon because it's going to give a list later on. So again, the colon just goes to show where our list starts. On the second one, it says Mark's new bike tires made the biggest difference of all, a smooth ride. So we need to think here about where the beginning of the sentence is, right? Mark's new bike tires made the biggest difference of all. Well, what was that big difference? What was the biggest difference of all? A smooth ride. So we put that colon there to show what we mean by the biggest difference of all and to explain it. I like to think of the colon here as like a big curtain opening, right? Or like a drum roll before they announce who the winner is. So it's giving us this setup, the biggest difference of all, and then it's telling us what that is at the end. Now the last one says the mixing of rain and the sun can create a beautiful phenomenon, a rainbow. So we have to ask ourselves once again, well, what is the example they're giving here? It creates a beautiful phenomenon, and what is that phenomenon? A rainbow. So we're going to add the colon right before a rainbow. Now let's do our final practice today. We have 3 more sentences that will need a combination of different punctuation. So the first one says, Lisa skipped her presentation day. She was too nervous to speak in front of her class. Now right away, I see there's a couple subjects here. I see Lisa and then I see she again. I see that there are kind of 2 ideas here. So when I say, okay, there are 2 complete sentences, right? Lisa skipped her presentation day. That's a complete sentence. She was too nervous to speak in front of the class. That's a complete sentence. So we need something that will show that they're connected, but still allow them to be complete sentences. And that is a semicolon. The second sentence says, many visitors were excited to see the variety of big cats at the zoo: lions, tigers, and pumas. So we're going to need a variety of punctuation here. First of all, I see we have a list of 3 things at the end. And I know I'm going to need to separate the things on the list which I remember I use a comma to separate things on a list. And then we also have a list at the end of a sentence. So to set off that list, I'm going to need some more punctuation. So let's see what we do. If we put a colon after zoo, that indicates that the first part of the sentence, many visitors were excited to see the variety of big cats at the zoo. That's a complete thought, but we're going to find out what those big cats are after the colon. So the colon introduces the list. And then the list is separated by commas. Lions, comma, tigers, comma, and pumas. For our last sentence, it says some elegant, decorative, sophisticated elephant pins were given to Erica. So here I'm seeing a lot of description about what kind of pins we have. They're elegant, decorative, sophisticated elephant pins. Whew. So to separate all that out and make it a little easier to process, we need to again think about items on a list. And when we have a list of adjectives, we can separate those with commas. Thank you so much for joining me today for this recap. I hope you learned something new and that you'll subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all the latest updates. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and at helmsacademy.org.